This time in Black Dog Garage, we're going to figure out why my 27 horse Kawasaki will not restart after you shut it off. The problem with this engine is it'll start fine when it's cold. It can be 30 degrees, it can be 80 degrees. It'll start up just fine, first time in the day. But after you use it for a little while, you mow for 15 minutes or several hours, it will not restart. Even if you give it a 5 or 10 minute cool down period, can't get it started again. It's actually been doing this for a while. I haven't been able to figure out what the issue is. It has good pressure coming from the fuel pump, both when it's cold and when it's hot. But it just won't restart hot. I think I finally found the problem. So I want to take you through what it is. But first, here is it starting when it is cold. First time of the day.
Or I should.
And then here's it starting when it's hot. This actually wasn't, it actually can be a lot worse than this. This was a relatively cool day, but just to give you an idea of what the symptom is. So we're going to kind of delve into what I think the problem is. We're going to do a little bit of testing so that hopefully you can figure it out for your engine as well. What led me to it, when I think the problem is the fuel shutoff solenoid in the carburetor that keeps fuel from getting pushed into the carburetor or drawn into the carburetor once you turn off the key, is not opening all the way. Because when I was trying to restart it the one time, I could hear a buzzing sound. I traced it down to that solenoid. The solenoid, I think, was kind of chattering back and forth. It was trying to open, but it wasn't opening all the way, which I think explains sometimes why when it's hot, I can get it to fire, it'll try to run, and then it dies again. It's because a little bit of fuel is making it in, but not nearly enough to keep the engine running. So we're going to kind of delve in, show you where the solenoid is on this engine. I actually have another horizontal shaft Kawasaki engine. I can show you where it is on that one as well. This one is not the easiest one to get to, but I will get into it and we'll take a look. We'll try to do some testing to figure out if it is the problem, so you can test yours before you even take it apart. So here we go. All right, so this particular engine is a FD750D. It's the carbureted version, obviously, I guess. It's a liquid cooled engine, but these solenoids, I'm sure, are pretty consistent among Kawasaki engines. So the same solenoid is probably used in a variety of engines. As I mentioned, unfortunately, this one is going to be a little bit difficult to get to. The solenoid itself is that guy down in there. So for this engine, I'm going to take the air cleaner off, and I'm going to probably have to take the fan and the fan pulley off to get in and get that out. You probably could remove the carburetor or remove the intake manifold and do it that way, but the gaskets that go around the carburetor on this engine are very expensive. I think there was like $20-some a gasket, and there's at least two of them, one on each side. So I'm going to try to leave the carburetor in place and just take the solenoid off. Or actually, even before that, I'm hoping to do a little bit of testing, test the resistance of it and see what it says. But I need to be able to get in and get a little bit better access first. So we'll get started on that. All right, so here's another fuel shutoff solenoid on another Kawasaki engine I have. This one is a vertical shaft style. A little bit different looking solenoid. I actually thought it would look a little more similar, but this one's really easy to get to. I wanted to show you. You can see it. The air cleaner is right here. So this one is easy to access. I unplugged it. I'm going to take an ohm reading, a resistance reading off of this one. I want to compare it to the one on the other engine. Now this is going to be cold. And the problem I have with the other one is when it's hot. But it'll be interesting to see what the difference is in the reading cold, if there is any. So let me put the camera somewhere and we'll see what it reads. All right, so we're set up here. I got 0.2 ohms just through my leads, which is a little interesting. I'll connect to, I pulled one side of the wire going to the solenoid off. So I'm going to put one probe on that. Maybe if I can get there. I'm going to go to, I'm not happy with how that's in there. There we go. Got one side there. I go to the ground that it's connected on the other side. And so I'd say I have about 34 or 35 ohms through the solenoid on this engine. And this solenoid seems to work fine. It seems to work without a problem. So let's go back and we'll check the one on the other engine and see what that one reads. All right, so back on the FD750 here, I managed to sneak a meter probe down into the solenoid. Actually, first I reached in with a pair of long needle nose pliers. I pulled the plug off of it, got a meter probe in there. I'll go to an engine ground, if you guys can see there. But this one, it's bouncing all over the place. Let me see here. All right, so I'm still on the solenoid. I'm getting 45 ohms. 41, so I may not. So somewhere around 40 ohms on this one. So the resistance is reading a little bit higher on this solenoid, even cold, than it was on the other one. I also have a couple parts carburetors that I got for this engine. The throttle shafts are all worn out on them, but we can also check those and see what those solenoids are reading. All right, so here's the two parts carburetors. We'll see this solenoid here. That one reads 38 and a half. So it's a little bit lower than the other one. And this one reads completely open. So this one's probably not even any good. Looking at it, that actually looks like that's kind of pushed out of there. So what I'm going to try to do, I looked up a replacement solenoid for this. A new one from Kawasaki was $120. The knockoff no-name one was like $12. So I think what I might do is I'm going to take the one that has the lower resistance off of this parts carburetor. I'm going to replace the one on the engine with this one, and we'll see if that fixes the problem. I'm not seeing huge resistance values or a huge difference in resistance between the different solenoids, but the fact that there was buzzing makes me really suspicious that there is an issue with that one. I guess the other thing that I don't know is if the wiring to the solenoid in the engine is good. It's possible that there's an issue with the wiring itself. I should check the voltage when the engine is hot. It would be really difficult to reach in there with a hot engine and get a voltage reading off of that that solenoid. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and replace the one that's on the engine with this one. I do have a service manual for this engine. I think before I tear into it, I will check and see if they have any testing procedures or resistance values for what a good solenoid should be. All right, so to kind of recap, the solenoid that I'm having a problem with when it's hot on this engine, but I think 41 or 42 ohms, cold. The solenoid was a little bit different style on the engine I know is good, was reading, I think, 34 ohms. Of the two junk carburetors that I have, the one solenoid is open circuit, that's no good. It actually physically looks damaged. The other one was reading, I think, in the high 30s, like 38. So, what to do? I wish I would have thought to check when the engine was hot, if there was a good constant voltage going to the solenoid that's on the engine. It is possible that there's an issue with the wiring that was caught in a connection problem that was causing that solenoid to chatter. However, it's November now, the grass isn't growing, it's cold out. I think replicating the condition is going to be tricky to do. So I think I'm going to just go ahead and throw a part at the engine based on what I know. I'm going to take the solenoid off this engine. I'm going to put this solenoid on that I have, and then we'll see if that takes care of the problem. I do know that I had issues restarting this after I had power washed it off and it ran for a little while on its own. So if I switch the solenoids and that problem is gone, then we'll know that it's the solenoid. So I think we'll go ahead, tear it apart, and get that taken care of. All right, so I got the air cleaner off the top of the engine and just able to reach in here with an open end wrench. And this solenoid was not very tight. I just kind of barely touched it and came loose, which is interesting. Makes me wonder if maybe part of the issue was it wasn't making good ground contact with the carburetor when it got hot. I'm going to go ahead and pull this one out, and I did notice earlier that it's really close to the nut that holds the fan shaft on. I wonder if it's going to hit that. Oh no, it's not. I'm running into the breather too. All right. The crankcase breather runs up right around that solenoid. I think it's just kind of rubbing on the side of that. So there we go. All right, so it's out. I'll try not to drop it. All right, so there's the one that was in the engine. This was the one off the parts carburetor that was not open circuit. They look more or less identical. I think I'll check the resistance on them now that they're out of the engine and or out of the carburetors, and see how similar they are now. They could be a little bit more equal. All right, so now that I have it out, the solenoid with the white paint strip on it is the one out of my junk carburetor. So we're going to compare them this way and see. We'll go from the threads where they screw in to the terminal. 39 ohms on the one out of the junk carburetor and the one that was in this engine. Oh wow, looks like 72. Oh, there's 44. Interesting. See if I can get something that's kind of consistent here. There's 49. 49. And the one out of the carburetor I think is good is 39. So it would be interesting to see, kind of prove our theory, if I could warm these up a little bit. I do have my wood stove going in here. Maybe I'll see if I can warm them up. You know, they're probably, I don't know, 60-some degrees now. Warm them up to there maybe, you know, 100 or 120 degrees, and then see what the resistances do. All right, so I've heated them up. They're somewhere around 120 degrees or so. 120, 130. Didn't dare go a whole lot higher. I know they probably get warmer than that on the engine, but I don't want to kill them, particularly the one that I'm planning on using. But so I thought we'd check again. All right, so this is the one that came off the junk carburetor. Resistance on this one now is 54, 53. Resistance on the one that was on the engine is identical at 53. It's very interesting. The other thing that I noticed was that while I was waiting for them to heat up, I pulled my service manual out and I was reading the test procedure for these. And the test manual actually says to test them by applying 12 volts to the solenoid and seeing if it pulls in. They said you may have to push in on the end of them a little bit to get them to withdrawal. So I thought we'd try that as well. So I have a battery charger here that puts out almost exactly 12 volts. So we'll put the negative onto the body here and touch the positive to the terminal. Don't see anything happening, so if I give a little push, that one pulls in. And that's the one off the engine I've been having trouble with. This one, touch it, doesn't do anything. Push a little bit and then it pulls in also. So I don't know, that makes me wonder if there's an issue in the adjustment or something. If the solenoid is too far out, it's not allowing it to pull in correctly. You know, if the manual is saying it's normal to need to push it a little bit. Although I guess in the carburetor, these would be up against the seat, so maybe they're not fully extended. I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm kind of losing confidence here as I go, but I think we'll go ahead and put the solenoid in off the my extra carburetor, and we'll see what happens. I do notice the end of the one that I was having trouble with does look that looks a little bulgier than the other one. So maybe there is something going on there internally that when it does get heated up really hot, it's causing it not to work or to work unreliably. So I'll go ahead and put the other one on, and then we'll give her a test run and we'll see what happens. All right, so we got the engines back together. I had a heck of a time getting the solenoid plugged back in once I had it in there. I actually had to loosen the mounts for the fan bearings to move that out of the way to get enough room to get the plug back into the mount there. But once I got that back in, I got everything back together. So we're ready for a test run. Unfortunately, at this point, it's dark outside. It's cold, so when I get a little bit warmer day, I got some light, I'll go out, I'll run it for a little bit, and I'll shut it off. I'll bring it in back in here where it's a little bit warmer. Let it sit for 15 minutes or so. Try to restart it, and we'll see what happens. The results that I found through the resistance tests were not nearly as conclusive as I was hoping for. I was hoping there'd be a clear difference there that we could say, you know, if you have a solenoid that's in this range, if you have a solenoid that's in this range, you can either know that it's bad or that it's good. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. The manual kind of bears that out in that they just check to see if it works. I did notice when I turn the key on now, I get a more positive click out of this one than I did with the other one. So maybe that's an indication that it's going to work. I don't know. We'll have to see. So we'll give it a test run, and then we'll bring you back and we'll see what we find. All right. So about a week has gone by. The weather's a little bit nicer. Since it's been sitting and not being used as much, it's gotten colder. The battery's kind of gone away on me, so I have a charger here. But here's the cold start. I'm going to start it up, let it run for a little bit and warm up. Mow, clean some leaves up and stuff a little bit, and I'll bring it back in here and let it sit for 10-15 minutes and see how it restarts. All right, so I ran it for half an hour or so, blowing some leaves, mowing a little bit of grass that grew. And then it sat for 15 minutes in the garage here where there's not a lot of breeze. So we'll try to fire it up and we'll see what happens. Don't hear the solenoid chattering, that's good. Seems pretty good. I really think that was the issue, especially because I could hear that solenoid chattering. So what do you do if you have a hot start problem where it starts cold, it won't start hot, and it seems like it's starving for fuel? I would check the fuel supply first, make sure that it is getting good fuel, which I mentioned in the beginning I did do. I had fuel pressure in this case because I used the pump. The solenoid testing is going to be difficult. I found a little bit of difference in the resistance of the bad solenoid and the good solenoid, although actually the resistance got very similar after I had warmed them up. The manual specifies that if you put 12 volts on the solenoid and give it a little push, it pulls in, then it's good. The bad one that was in here did that. At least on the bench when it wasn't all that hot. So I wish I was hoping to come up with a way that you could easily test yours, preferably without even taking it off, so if you get a good one or not. But that seems difficult to do. But I would be highly suspicious if you have good fuel pressure,
It runs fine all the times, except once it sits and gets that heat soak to it, that maybe it is that fuel shut off solenoid. So hope this helps someone out. I feel pretty confident that it fixed my problem. If I see it come back when when the weather is hot again, I will update this and let you know. Thanks for watching.